Hello, this video is going to help you use your articles in your final exam essay. So let's just do a little recap. Your essay is going to be about market structure. So you're going to start your essay out describing what is market structure, what does it measure, and why is it an important concept. And when you talk about why it's important, it could be very useful for you to use the SCP model to demonstrate why market structure is a very important concept. The reason why the SCP model will help you is because the SCP model kind of demonstrates how changes in market structure causes changes in conduct. And so if you don't know your market structure, you don't know how to behave. And more importantly, if your market structure changes, you won't know how to adapt because you won't be aware of the need to adapt because you don't know that your market structure is changing because you don't know your market structure. So the SCP model is a good way for you to help explain why market structure is a very important concept to know. Now, once you get through that, you'll talk about the different market structures we've discussed. You'll say something briefly about perfect competition, something briefly about monopoly, and then you'll say something about oligopoly, and you'll say that oligopoly market structure is special. It's special when compared to perfect competition and monopoly, and it's special for three reasons. One is it's more realistic. Two, it we have to worry about interdependency, and three, price and output tend to be more stable. Now, you'll use these three items to structure your discussion about oligopoly. For example, when you talk about more realistic, have some examples of some industries that are considered to be oligopolistic. When you talk about interdependency, you could talk about how this is the very first market structure where we had to worry about the reaction of our rival when we do something. Let's say when we change price or change advertising spending, we have to worry about what our rival will do. And this is why we use game theory. So game theory could be a good way for you to help uh, people understand why interdependency is unique in this market structure. And then finally, price and output tend to be more stable in this market structure when compared to perfect competition and monopoly. And this is where you'll introduce the kink demand curve and the marginal revenue curve. So here's the kink demand curve. Here's the marginal revenue curve with this gap right here. And the kink demand curve and the marginal revenue curve are two ways for you to graphically show why output and price don't change as much in this market structure than other market structures. And this is where you work in your articles when you talk about the kink demand curve and when you talk about the marginal revenue curve. For example, let's say you draw a kink demand curve and you say, let's say the price is $7 and output is 8,000. When one firm raises price, you're going to be moving along the flat part of the demand curve. And the flat part of the demand curve is the more elastic part. And so when price goes up, coin demanded will fall a lot, so total revenue will fall. And the reason why quantity will fall a lot is because when you raise price, rivals will not match your price. So your customers are going to be very sensitive to price. So price goes up, total revenue falls. You don't really like that. So what if you lower price? When you lower price, this time your rivals are going to copy your price cuts. They didn't copy your price increase, they will copy your price cuts. And this means your customers are going to be um, less sensitive when your rivals copy you. And you're going to be moving around the steeper demand curve or the more inelastic demand curve. So inelastic, price falls, demand does not go up very much, so total revenue falls. So you've just demonstrated when price goes up, total revenue falls, price goes down, total revenue falls. This is why you don't like to compete upon price. This is why price doesn't change that much. And this is where you work in your two examples um, from your articles. For example, when you talk about how when one firm raises price and you move along the flat demand curve, you could say this is like in 2007 when Southwest raised their price for airfare between San Francisco and Los Angeles. Virgin and United did not follow suit, and Southwest saw revenues fall by 22%. Can you see how you're working in the example when you talk about moving along the flat part of the demand curve? You, this is where you introduce your price increase article. Then when you talk about how when a firm lowers price, you move along the steep demand curve, rivals do not copy your price cuts, you work in your other example. And you could say this is like in 2008 when Sony lowered the price on their PlayStation 3, Microsoft and Nintendo quickly matched the price cuts, and as a result, the industry saw revenues fall 22%. This is where you work in your example right here. So I've just explained to you how you work in two of your essays. One, when you talk about moving along the flat demand curve. Another one when you move along the steep demand curve. Now the third article is about a cost increase. This is in oligopoly when costs go up or change. This does not necessarily lead to a change in output or price. Unlike monopoly or perfect competition, whenever costs changed up or down, you had an adjustment in price and quantity. Not always the case here. When the marginal revenue curve, excuse me, when the marginal cost curve um, crosses this gap, if it increases, let me just draw a one for you. I'm going to just draw something here. Yeah, I'll just use this right here. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to ungroup it. Hold on. Copy. And then I'm going to go up to here and paste. Oh, it didn't copy. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to copy and then paste. Come on, paste. That's not what I want. Well, let me try one more time. Now I'm going to go over to here and paste it. There we go. This is going to be my marginal cost curve. So let's go back to here. So now you see my marginal cost curve. So this is marginal cost. This is marginal revenue. Where they cross, this determines output and then price. And what the marginal revenue gap tells you is if this curve shifts up, means there's an increase in costs, you're still going to have the same Q and the same P. So in other words, modest changes in cost don't always lead to a change in output and price. And then you would say this is like in 2010 when the airline industry saw fuel prices go up 22%. Airlines were reluctant to increase fares for fear of losing customers. As a result, the industry saw profits fall by 22%. Do you see how you worked in your article with your quotes when talking about the marginal revenue curve and marginal cost curve? So this is where you work in your third article. So let me recap. You're going to be introducing your three articles when talking about your marginal the kink demand curve. You talk about one article when you raise price, another article when you lower price, and then you introduce the cost article when you talk about marginal cost shifting within the gap of the marginal revenue curve. So this is how you work in your 3 articles um, for your essay. If you have any questions, please email me.